I was really big on talking about Kevin Spacey, and I'm sure you guys seen that news, right? I kind of knew it was going to go that way just because was this in London? Yeah, in London. Okay. So they have a major problem with rape in general and the way how they view it, and they still rape kids over there like no other. It was kind of up in the air like what they would do. And in fact, their jury was like 9 men. So you have 9 men that promote rape generally publicly, because a lot do, on a jury, and there's like 3 women who, normalize this stuff generally. It's not going to go well. It was already, away from the victims. Men harm themselves, and while I'm looking this up, I don't know who the hell was searching for this, and it wasn't me. It says, how old is Kevin Spacey's wife? I don't know. It says related searches. I've never searched for that. So it's not me. It's somebody, a bunch of other people. Probably a bunch of Karens that think he's hot. Because I've been reading the comments and they're just like, yay, I'm glad he's innocent because I love his acting. It's like, you do know he has like, probably in the realm of hundreds of victims. But about 15 or 20 came forward, in this period of time. But they actually came, forward, um, about 10 years ago or so. It's been a long time. I started following that. Like I said, if you guys missed the intro to this, like a long, long time ago, when Twitter was a baby, I jumped on there while some people were still on MySpace and they started going to Facebook, right? And I went on Facebook and Facebook started outing everybody and doing some weird stuff. And I was like, God, you guys got to be careful of this. I would stay off it, right? And it probably won't last. Like I was thinking it's not going to last because they were doing some bad things over there. Um, and everybody ignored it, right? And then all this other stuff came forward, like within the past, couple of years. I'm getting it, just stuff like that. But it was there. It was there at the get go, and they had no care about other victims. Um, they were just doing some stuff, and I pointed out these things. I'm ahead of my own time, and I know it too. So I'm always kind of ahead of the game there on a lot of stuff. Um, but so that got ignored, and then you see all the LGBTQ issues, right? So in their community they have a lot of sexual violence as well, right? It's not it doesn't matter who, what, anything, your preferences of anything, but in that community it makes it harder for them to come forward as well because of the stigma, and all the things with religion, that was attached to that community. So they kind of deal with things on their own within that community. And I believe because of the time period when you're talking about the early 90s, and before that, when they couldn't come out, and they got a lot of them got pushed into their smaller community, right? And uh a lot of kids were involved in that, and then so a lot of abuses happened from that. But it wasn't just because of that, but those were the additions in it, so people couldn't come forward. So another thing is, at that time period, they didn't consider men being victims of rape, right? So that was another thing. So this is all from the religious doctrines and stuff. There's books on male supremacy in the Catholic Church and stuff, so that talks about that. But the problem I have with that analogy, if you call it that, is that they kind of are acting like the church was originally like this, but then it turned to male supremacy. It's like, no, it was created by male supremacists that then wrote a religion around their viewpoints, right? So, because you see it in a whole bunch of them. So, without getting into the deeper thing of that, I was just pointing it out because I was like, yeah, there's people trying to tackle that, but in the early 90s, the term male supremacy wasn't really thrown around like that. And I think a lot of the abuses were heavily misunderstood. Like, nobody was speaking out, so nobody's really educated on the mass abuses. And even when you did say you got abused, they said you deserved it. And, it was promoting, physical violence on children and, all these things. So there was a soup combination there. And so kids were coming out a bunch of sociopaths, right? And that's where this correlation is coming from. Because I've been sitting here going for years. If you guys followed any of this for years, I was documenting these other cases, and I'm like, sociopath, like what? How is that? Like I don't know. It just was over here on the side. But then at the same time, I was documenting the sexual abuses, and I started seeing this thing, and it was like these things that were there, and I was like, it's the same though, and then I said somebody had asked me a question like, why is there all these pedophiles? And I was like, I have no idea, really. Let me look into this. It's just like, no, they exist. I was trying to figure out because in my aunt's case, being LGBTQ as well, I know abuses happen there. So I was kind of questioning like how that thing formed because there's just questions. It's like you should question it, even if your thought about it is wrong, right? Because you'll discover that it's wrong, right? And it'll lead you somewhere else. So it was kind of going into this thing, and I was like, yeah. So then the Indian school thing came up, right? And they're going on about that, and the age of consent thing was really important here because they didn't come out with the age of consent thing till I guess around 1920s or so. So there was a huge thing about this, and we're still discovering a lot more information as we go on this stuff. But I had to kind of like pull back on talking about it. It's a lot on me because it's stuff that happened to me, and I have to read verbally abusive stuff all the time, such as from the lawyer that did this case from Kevin Spacey, where he basically, or he, I don't know, I don't even have the story up right now, but they basically, what they did was, Kevin's a sociopath through and through. Like, there's no question about it. The thing is if he lost, I wanted to see how he was going to react, and he should have lost, but he didn't lose, so I can't see the reaction of his kind, which has been of interest of what he was going to do there. He was probably just going to play innocent again, or I don't know, some nonsense, but kind of curious because he kind of goes about things a little differently. But here now he gets to play the big show because it went in his favor, and they basically enabled the sociopath. So we're watching this right now. So they're creating this monster bigger and bigger. And so now he's going to fight back and say, the media. And what he did was he painted all these men as liars. Which, like I say, all these men are liars. Not, I say all men are liars in the fact that they deny that they're a bunch of rapists, but they're not lying when they're saying they're victims. For the most part, there's always this outlier, some person that wants to make up some other, they're also sociopaths as well. We've seen this other story, right, with the what's her name, Carlee? Yeah, so I was talking about that one. So I was like, yeah, I don't normally just jump out and call somebody a liar. I was saying, we get kidnapped all the time. Like, there's a everyday kidnapping where, in fact, this guy just said it in the news, where they're like, the state kidnapped me and threw me in prison for 17 years without me being guilty of anything and tried to say I'm a rapist. It was the state. Okay, so it wasn't some girl coming out going lying, and saying so and so did something. It was the state. They were like, oh, you're the one that did it, right? And these stories are messed up. This is based on nothing. Like, it could be based on, I didn't read the whole story of it, but it could be based on where they're like, here's some photographs. Do you think this guy's familiar? And it's really screwed up for victims for those things, but it's also screwed up, obviously, to the innocent person that gets thrown in there. But he was saying he used it properly. The state kidnapped me. And I was like, yes. The term kidnapping should be used quite more often because in a lot of these cases, they're kidnapping. So such as like Kevin driving, let's just say Kevin took some victim and he's like, we're going to go here. And then he decides he wants to go to his house or something and then touches him. Well, it's kidnapping. I mean, the kidnapping portion has to do with, it doesn't need to be violent. It doesn't need to be by force. Kidnapping is related to rape in general because it has something to do with no consent. Like, you didn't consent to go somewhere, right? So that type of kidnapping is so common. And it's seen a lot with kids, right? So like some stranger might come up and go, oh, your parents told me that, I came to pick you up. And they want me to take you to your house or something, something like that. So then the kid consents, right? Because the kid like thinks, oh, my parents told me to. So there's no violence there. It's just a lure, right? But the consent there, the kid can't consent, number one, but two, they're consenting to being brought to their parents, right? And then what inevitably happens in those cases is then something bad happens, and um, but actually, a lot of times they live to tell about it. So they should talk about that properly. And more times than not, when you're kidnapped, you live. It's not a hostage situation like people were talking about. It was so annoying. I was like, this is why my friends were laughing when I got kidnapped as a kid. Um, and it was kind of, it reminded me of the Whoopi Goldberg thing when she's like, it's not rape. It's like, it's not kidnapping. It's like, no, it was kidnapping. Because what was supposed to happen was we were at a friend's house. I kind of want to share this really quick, but we were at a friend's house and we were all hanging out. And for some reason, this guy who I didn't know was a friend of my friend's brother, older brother. All these older guys were really terrible predators, right, on kids. And he was like this Christian loony guy that lived in some apartment with the pinball machine. I could swear it was like a Playboy pinball machine. It was really weird. And we're all kids and we're all hanging out there. And I think this was in my, I'm thinking it was either my 10th grade or the last year. I had my video camera, I think back in this portion. But anyway, we were supposed to go to the store, the corner store, the little liquor store with the food mart and everything, to go get, I think, sodas and probably nachos, because that was my thing back then. I don't know, but we're supposed to go there to get just a couple items and come right back. So it should have only been like a 10-minute thing, like 5-10 minute thing. I've talked about this before, and so I only agreed to do that, and they sent me alone with this guy. I don't know why, but and I had a car, so maybe I didn't have a car here. Like, I don't really know what happened here, but they drive past it, and he starts driving into the field area, and I'm like, and it was really scary. It was really scary. It was really scary. And he drives to a cemetery in this weird part. Like, if you've seen the Sherry Papini case, that one, okay, so it's the same town, same area actually, but if you go to the west of where she was running out on the field thing, so if you go to the west of that, there's this weird cemetery out in the middle of nowhere. I never knew. I lived there my whole life. I never even knew that existed. And he drives up into this place and there's nobody around. And he starts wandering inside the cemetery. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know, what are we doing? And I don't even remember what he said. It was just too creepy. I was too busy like thinking like, what do I do? Are we gonna leave? Like, oh my God. And then after that, he gets into the car and he's like, yeah, see, we're almost out of gas. I think he was doing it the whole way down, though, too. He was pointing out, he's like, look, I have no gas. Like, it's about to die. And I was like, why? Okay, so if you know you don't have any gas, why would you be trying to do that, right? So he was trying to get it to run out of gas, to have us stuck out there together. And I'm a kid and he's some older guy. And he's ugly. He's not even, like, it was nothing like that. And we were just supposed to drive to get some snacks. So it was like an hour later, like an hour. It was like a long time. And we get back and I'm freaked the hell out. Like, I don't even know if we went to the store actually, even after that. Maybe. And then finally they get something. And then we go back to the house, to the apartment. And my friends are laughing. They're like, where'd you guys go? Oh my God, it was a long time. I could have been murdered and killed by that time. They're laughing. They're like, oh, do you guys to get? I'm like, what the hell? So they made it not serious, but that is kidnapping. So that was a good example of it, because I consented to go to the store. I didn't consent to be taken out to a cemetery and have a guy almost run out of gas. Like, that's really scary. He could have raped and killed me. He could have done a lot of things there. I don't know what was going on in his head, right? The MO in his head doesn't matter. It's the actions of what they did. So that's kidnapping. So when the girl came out with this story, and I have a lot of whack kidnapping stories, like that one with the church, right? So I was like, we don't even know why they did it. That one, I didn't, I don't even know. Like, they made up a thing saying they were going to help me do this thing, and then did that, and then dumped me. Like, it was really scary. Like, I don't know if they had any other MO to it or whatever the hell it is, but they just randomly picked up a kid. And, sometimes that takes years to figure out, because when you're younger and you're not educated on what the actual term of kidnapping is, besides the version that you get on TV of somebody getting tied up and thrown in a trunk, you don't report it. And I was pointing out on the Paris Hilton case the same thing. Like, that guy took off, I think, with her in the car kidnapping. Because if her parents were like, oh, that teacher took off with my daughter, and he would have got caught, he would have got in trouble for kidnapping right there. But I'm sure if you asked her at the time, she wouldn't say kidnapping, because it doesn't fit the bullshit that they were spewing to us as kids. So you're not really educated on the actual terminology of it. Now, they may want to try to fight that and say, oh, us men can take women wherever we want without consent. Well, that's kidnapping, but you might make it legal, but that's still kidnapping, right? So Kevin here, anyway, was able to paint all men as liars, all the victims. And so men continually harm themselves in these things. So when they're promoting rape, this is what you're going to get in court. And I kind of thought that was going to happen. I was kind of concerned because it happened here. And it was kind of up in the air because London, I believe it was London, where they started getting on top of the rapist cops. And like here, there was a big push, I believe, in the UK somewhere, because the cop, the serial killer cop, whatever, he did some major harm to one of the girls and murdered her and whatever. And so they were getting on top of that thing right there. But it's a major problem. So unfortunately, when it's a major problem, that means the public has that problem, right? It's very elementary on trying to understand that. So when you pull in the public as a jury that is a pro-rapist, they're more than likely going to say, everything he did was fine. You know, and they don't make the laws properly for that. So it makes it even harder to fight those cases because their terminology. So they in the past couple years, they updated the terms for rape for men. So even still, they're still behind. And I keep saying, even just regular sexual assault, which, when you're talking about groping, which is sexual assault, is still rape. Because when you start getting down to the nitty gritty, when they start defining rape for men, you start seeing that it's a little bit more than just a penetration thing, right? So, yeah, I mean, you're still getting raped. I mean, technically speaking. Now, legally speaking, it's all a hot mess everywhere, right? So the fact that people take that verdict like it means he's innocent is a joke. I mean, so you're going to sit here and say everybody's lying. Everybody's a liar now. Now it's not just women. Now they're saying all these male victims are a bunch of liars. They have to do it. Socios have to do this because they're defending themselves in court, right? It's like, unless you really don't want to have a chance, right? They're going to say that they're innocent. Now, there are cases where they're innocent because I just pulled out the one, but the guy wasn't pulled out. It was like, I don't know how he got picked out to be guilty in this case, but a lot of those cases, because I've been going through them, seeing like what's going on here, a lot of them have to do with police conduct and how they go about the case. And I was talking about how they were talking to me about going after these people. Because I have a case, one of the cases that's so long ago from a stranger, right? Their stranger ones are really hard to pull because you don't know who the person is, and you could sit there and say all this other stuff. But this one case where it was like I wasn't raped in it or anything, but it was another girl where I was a witness to something, and there was an attempt to something with me. And the description of the person, I was like, okay, this is the only one that I feel confident in giving them a description about, and where I feel that they could figure out who did it. So I have a million of them, but this particular one, I was like, I can narrow, just the description of the person narrows it down so much that you would probably I mean, I'm throwing this out there. Probably max there would be 3 people in LA that would fit that particular, and that's probably saying too much. That description of a person because of certain characteristics of the person. So, I gave him this description, and it sounds funny to begin with, but the situation, when it was happening, it seemed comical at first until somebody pulled out and showed a gun. So then it's not funny anymore. And I knew that when I sang the story to them that they may think it's not real just because of the nature of it. But I actually found a person that fits that description later. And I was like, well, there's one in a million, and it's probably 1 in 5 million that would fit that, but I don't know. I would need some rough data on that exact description. So I was like, well, I don't know if they were in the area. I know somebody that they hung out with, or at least had knowledge of knowing who they are, was in the area around that time period. But again, I can't go accusing that they're deceased right now. Okay, so that person passed away, but I don't know if it was them or not. But I can't go, oh, that person. Same thing with the GNR thing. It's like, all I can say is they looked like that individual, but it actually could be another guy within their camp, right? I can't do that unless I know for sure. And if I knew for sure, I would definitely say it's not a thing that I would hold back on. But you don't want to do that. So that was a good example of that, because you don't want to get somebody in trouble whom it wasn't, and it just so happened to be somebody that looked similarly, and it's just related to, right? So I try to make that clear on that story right there. But no, it's factually true. It's really bad. That story's really bad. I just never wanted to talk about it before. I kept bringing up the other portions of it to see what people would say, like that they knew him. If they go, oh, that's so and so, yeah, nobody did. So, yeah, so yeah, that's why I don't agree with their processing of those cases, because yeah, very well. Like, let's just say like this on the case where I'm saying the description of the other person, because this was around the same time, the GNR thing and that one. That, let's just say I said that, and then they go, oh, well, that one guy fits that description, so we're just gonna throw him in prison. And then it turns out it's not even him, and it's another guy that looks similar. That can happen. And in this case here, I would say it would be really hard to find that description of a person out here. But you never know, and there could be like maybe 10 of them, right? Even if there's 10 of them, you have a chance of throwing someone innocent in, right? And that's why I didn't want to do that. So I gave them the description. So the thing about that person is they would most definitely have a criminal record. Um, and their characteristics would be very easy to figure out. And another thing about it is that they would have had to be in the area at the time of. And so those are additions, like to this person, it would be rare. Like if that person, the other one that passed away, if that person was in the area at the time when I'm saying the story, um, that would narrow it down that there's a good chance that it could be that person, because it would be out of this world that there would be multiples that look like that and that are running around. This whole thing about it. There's a very specific thing about them. Um, and so I don't believe they did anything about it. The only other thing I could think of in that case, because it was sent to the human trafficking hotline, which I do not believe in and tell people don't use. The only other thing that would make any sense in this is if at the time eventually somebody got arrested and then they figured out who the victim was, and it was already taken care of. But there's a question in the case because of another individual that was there, and if it was an undercover cop, then he should go to jail too, because he witnessed it. and we need to figure out who that individual is. Like, there's so much in these cases, you guys. It's not like I just made up a story. Unlike that Carlee person. So when I was going through her case, it was just out of this world. I was like, there's no logical reasoning to do a kidnapping that way. I'm just telling you guys, because I've gone through a million serial killer cases, and obviously she wasn't killed, so it wouldn't be that. And even if they just wanted to rape her, it's like the person wouldn't know who the hell's going to stop to begin with on a freeway. I'm the only one in the middle of the night that will stop on a freeway for some crazy nonsense, right? And I've done it a million times. But one thing that I do and I wouldn't do, I wouldn't go jumping into the bushes. Two, I would not be anywhere without a call box. And I think even if I had a cell phone, it would depend. Because the call box will show exactly my location. And so anytime I've ever done that was at a call box. I think there was another time where there was no call box because I was off the freeway at that point, and I think we went to maybe a liquor store around the corner or something. Because before everybody had all the cell phones, I think people started getting like prepaids and started getting all the stuff. But yeah, that's how I dealt with it. But I'll tell you this: even if there was no call box, I would not be getting out of my. I mean, I would actually legitimately have to see a kid like in front of me, and then I would get out of my car, and then if I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't go jumping in the bushes in the middle of the night. That much I know. If I just called the 911, I would wait for him and just keep an eye on the kid going, "Come here," or whatever. Like a toddler doesn't really know, like the toddler. And it could happen. That was the other thing about the case was like I was like, that could be leading to another grisly detail that some mom got killed somewhere and the kids wandering, because that's happened. And then, or, some neglect and some kid got out. Like that could happen too. And then, or some homeless families out there and some nonsense like that. So I was thinking of all these things, right? But the other half of it doesn't make any sense, right? Because if it was any of that stuff, then why she disappear for 2 days, right? That was the other thing. And then they said that all her the stuff was there. Nobody stole nobody stole her stuff. So I was like, well, it's not a robbery because they would have taken all that. So anyway, it was just a process of elimination. And I called, I called it out. And then we got backlash for it. It was really weird. They're like, we need to support her no matter what. I was like, nah. I was like, because I even was watching this other show. What was it on Oxygen? They had these horrible cases on there, and they had these crazy cases. That weird bomber one, and just some other ones. Like they were just plots, right? But regardless of the crazy plots, the MO has to do with what? Money, right? So they're trying to do money scams, right? Or rob people, whatever. So some of the things in these kidnapping cases are a couple of things. Usually, it has to do with rape, not human trafficking. I don't know of any human traffickers that would do this on a freeway. I can't speak for somewhere like Mexico, but in general, like if they're looking for girls, right, like to go do something, it would not be in this way because more than likely in the middle of the night, a guy is going to stop. Then it would be me, right? A female. But me personally, I would stop. Okay. I'm just saying, but other women would not. And I've rescued people. I've done all kinds of crazy stuff um, because there's nobody around and it's like, I can't just leave people to die, like there was a situation. So, and then they get mad at me it's so weird anyways, but those are the things that I don't get, thank yous for or anything like that. Because they don't really know who's doing it, making the calls. But yeah, because then I take off like after they come. So I don't even meet with them. I take off. But I'm at a call box, so if they wanted to talk to me, they can come up to the call box. Then so what happened here? Oh, so somebody was watching the clip and said they saw a backpack, and I was like, ah, there's no damn backpack. I didn't see a backpack, and it's too far away to even see a backpack. But I was thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe I should zoom in on this, but I'd have to pull it into my computer, and I really don't care enough to do it because I already knew it was not real. Like, I go, I don't know why she made it up. Maybe she got personality disorder because, that crap. I mean, she went full on out. Like, she didn't even need to call the cops. Like, that was the thing about it. I was like, if she just like wanted to play some bullshit with her family, she could have totally done it, and the cops would have thought she got kidnapped anyway, just for an open car, right? And I was thinking about it. I guess she probably called so they would come right away to get that car because it's a red Mercedes. I was like, oh yeah, because if you did that out here, that car would be gone in about 2 seconds. But yeah, it was all kind of messed up. So then, but I thought maybe she was hallucinating. Like, that was another thing. I go, she could have that other problem because there was another case where that happened, and then the girl eventually died because she really thought she saw something, and then she fell into a frozen pond, right? This is a real story. And then people were having a hard time understanding that she has a mental illness, and they were convinced that somebody did it to her. And I was like, nope, they showed the videos. There's nobody on video. She's running away from imaginary things, and that's unfortunate, and they need to be aware of that type of thing. I feel bad for anybody that has that. I can't imagine. I can't. I feel really bad for anybody that has that. But it was accidental. And so this case, I thought maybe might have been that because when they showed the video, she was driving all slow, like she's looking for something. I'm like, is she imagining that some kid's riding on the side of the car? Because that could happen. Well, apparently no. And then they found out more information. So everybody's talking about that. But I was like, yeah, I mean, but I knew it wasn't real. That's what I was saying. I went through this long list of things, and I was like, none of it. Unless it was like you could have a situation, maybe like a personal MO, right? Like something that would be outside the context of money, kids, rape, some extortion plot, like something. It would revolve around that stuff, right? Now, unless you had a personal thing, like your boyfriend wanted, I don't know, some other nonsense that you couldn't even think of, like you'd have to know the story in order to even come to some nonsense like that. It just made no sense. I was like, that nobody does that. But her family came out and was enabling it and said that, um, some human traffickers and used a doll to lure her. And I'm like, what? Made up this story, man. It was so bad. I was like, that family, man, needs to be busted. I was like, you knew she was always like that. It's not a thing where she turned 25 and they're like, we had no idea she was off her rocker like this. That's not. Mm-mm. Nope. And other people had said that she had a long history of this stuff, and they pulled up that movie that she pulled up here was actually pulled up in 2013. I go, yeah, so she was a minor then. And yeah, so that those things would be present. Mostly personality disorder, yeah. And people are using terms like spoiled brat, and I'm like, that's not a we should stop actually saying that because technically, like when you go back into this, the parents, that's their kid. And they knew she was like that, but they were enabling it. That's a thing about us. Well, wait a minute, you need to like stop letting these parents off the hook with this stuff because I talked about the PDs before because it's like there's no cure for them, and I think that's for most of them. But I mean, I only touch on the one main one, but they're pulling up other things. Like I was like, I don't know if it's the BPD. I don't know because their thing has to do with, I think, needing attention. Like they do things to try to get like specific attention for something. But like I said, there's some weird crossovers where you can get confused with the other thing with that stuff, but then they can have multiple things. So then when I was looking at her, I was like, maybe other, but then they said she's criminal and she plotted to steal money. And I was like, well, it could be a combo. I can't diagnose her, but she's not, it wouldn't fit the typical usual other thing, but it could be there, and that could be why that's in it. Just being a spoiled brat wouldn't turn you into a criminally minded person. Like, how do I steal money from my job? That's not a spoiled brat. That's a criminally minded person. And those people are typically sociopath. They're typically ASPD, but they could be some other things. And but that was a weird thing that was thrown in there. That's why I was like, that one's tricky, but it could be a mix, and that may be why it's not coming out like so obvious in that one. But it's more for I mean, I don't know why she did it. A fantasy about being, missing and being rescued, maybe, trying to get attention from her parents. Like, it could be that her parents are so, controlling, obnoxious, they were religious. And I was like, yeah, there's a thing there that's not good. Yeah, there was a number of things in that. So I was like, it's hard to say, but there's some indications there because they're cuddling and they're overly religious and they started making up some out of this world stuff. Like they thought that it would be human trafficking and used a doll. That was the family. Then they got the ex-boyfriend involved and he's ashamed right now and he's like, oh my God, what the hell? He's like, my family told me, what did he say? My family told me to, act in love and blah, blah. It's like, yeah, to a point though. It's like you knew her, you're an ex now, so you know that she must have some quirks about her that, wasn't okay. Like I would totally assume that you would notice these things. Like something of trying to get attention for um I don't I was trying to who do I know that has ever done that? I don't know if I know anybody that's ever done that. Not this thing, but I'm just thinking like I don't know. I'd have to think really hard. Like, I couldn't even pick somebody out right now that has done any of that. I know some, like, what you would consider spoiled brats. Those were the rich kids, right? But to turn around and say that they would think about thieving and stealing money, no, they didn't. I mean, I don't know what they did, but that's kind of an addition. That's a criminal thing. Like, if you have money, why would you go and steal it? I know there was a mindset though of like, what's money? Like we just get it all the time. Like they don't have any concept for money, but that's different than plotting to steal from your job. Like that's a very different thing. Um, but yeah, so Kevin is a very oh, she just called him a high functioning ASPD. So basically, we just watch him get completely enabled. So the monster is getting bigger, and I just my thing with that is like I already know how he's gonna be for generally. The public is where I have the problem with. So it's society as a whole and the way that they're responding to it. A verdict in a case does not mean somebody's innocent. I don't know where this bullshit right here and not always when somebody's considered guilty is actually guilty of those crimes. Now, I have no faith in the system. Once in a blue moon, something right happens. But in general, you're having people judge the case based on their own morale. And their morale really sucks. As you see, we're still fighting a lot of stuff. And one of the major cases that came up was the Melendez case, the brother case. And I even admitted, I was like, if you would have asked me about that case back in like, let's say 90 something, I would have said, yeah, they did the right thing over there. I'm not exactly sure what the right thing is to do in that case, but I do know that for sure the abuses did occur. I'm pretty sure that's pretty obvious at this point. It's just that not having enough education on the actions of humans in a situation like that makes it very hard to put yourself in their shoes. And so my judgment, if you would have asked me in the ignorant 90s, would have, oh, never let him out, it would have been this thing. And I'm trying to be as honest as possible on this thing and why it would have been that and why it's changed now because education. Education. So for me, going through that, and funny enough, he's getting a divorce now. Yeah, and the thing about Ricky. I was like, everything has to be done in a certain way and everything's covered up to make him look like a saint. So you don't really know what happened there, but it's like, oh, I'm the one that ran out and did the divorce. Like this whole thing. There's a whole game over there that I told you guys pay attention because it's very odd that everybody else came out as a victim. So they want them all to be seen as liars or something. I support all those guys from Menudo. Dude, that thing is so messed up. That whole thing right there. And I went and researched this when I did those clips, when I watched the documentary, I went back into it going, they went up to claim that Ricky's the one that got touched and all this other thing. Now, he may have too also in it, but there was an addition in it where somebody said, they're like, no, but somebody else from the group got harmed by so and so, but they didn't out who it was, right? And this is way long time ago before any of this came back up. So it's not made up because it's not a thing where they're just saying it now because they just want to help him get out. It wasn't a thing like that. It was brought up and I was looking at that and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. That's not good. And then he finally goes, yeah, that was, me, whatever, this thing happened and we were aware of it. And then they were pulling up old note things and I was like, yeah. Now, we're not promoting to go do this to your parents. Like, this is not that. But the fact that it was ignored of how victims react. And I had to actually reflect on my case, one of them with the other guy. I didn't kill anybody. I was like, I didn't kill anybody, but I was saying that I wouldn't have felt bad about it at the time because I couldn't get away from them, right? And I was like, but I did, to me, I felt like I did the right thing because I know that if I had done anything like that, I would have went to prison. They wouldn't care that I'm a victim. They weren't seeing me as a victim. They're still not seeing me as a victim now. And the guy's running free and technically, like, it would have been a self-defense thing. So again, that popped up on another case and I had to sit with it. It's just one of those things where it's like I didn't take time out to stew on that because I never did anything like that. But did I think, like maybe this would be an out, I'm going to go chase this guy down because, I can't get rid of them. I couldn't escape and the cops were helping him out. And I was like, yeah, that could have happened and it would really suck. And then I'd be in prison and nobody would care that my dad dumped me off here with them. And then, this guy comes in and then I had to do that in self-defense. Like, again, that case that Kim K brought up, it was like I had to reevaluate my own thing beyond her thing. So it's being based on how I'm viewing my own situations, right? And that was pretty apparent in these other cases where the guy's like totally an abuser and all the women are like defending the guy. He's great, but they're okay with abuse. That's the problem. So when you're asking somebody, you have to find out their definition of those things and how they view what is abuse and what is not, right? So here it's like you have to be in that situation or have some type of understanding to, comprehend like how would you react in it. Now, I'm just saying why I didn't react the way I did. But again, if it became a situation where I finally couldn't get out, well, what is the out in the situation? There is no other out except for that, right? So in that case, then should you throw someone in prison for eternity because that was the only actual way out? The cops aren't doing anything. So, so it's based on that type of stuff. And as like humans are faulty, you're not even dealing with specialists, right? So if you even had special, like some of them, they're not all perfect either, but I would feel a little better had you had some people that specialized in rape and literally understands what the hell it is and doesn't have these like weird moral ridiculous views on men can do whatever the hell they want to anybody, including men. So they don't see it as wrong doing it to women. So when you go into court, they're going to see it being okay done to other men, right? Because they're all rapists. So when they do that, they don't see their actions as being wrong at all. So why would they look at another guy and go, I just grabbed her, what? So, but again, at the end of the day, they just painted out all male victims as liars, and men should not be okay with it, but they're okay with it. They're actually promoting it right now, going, great, Kevin, we love your thing. you're already ready to make that comeback. You don't even care about anything you've done. All you care about is your career. That's it. That's all he cares about in life. Like, it's the crazy, but he's a sociopath. Like, that's their thing. Like, nothing else. And I've said, men were the number one that started cancel culture on women, on victims all day long. Like, it started there. And it's funny that women didn't come out going, "Oh, cancel culture." Like, they did. But we're not the perpetrators. The perpetrators are the ones doing this because they're saying, like, we're not going to support you for being a rapist. And you have every right to not. Like, it just is one of those things. It's just like they're trying to force you to go support them. I was like, nobody has to support you. You never supported any female victims, so why would you support any male victims? And then they literally painted out Anthony as a liar. They painted out 15, 20 others now as I'm just like, this is outrageous that the public is allowing this, but the public is a hot mess. And that is your jury. That is your jury. And I was barred from being a juror since I was a kid because of our family, right? I talked about that. I was like, well, I was not supposed to be a juror because it's like a conflict for government there. So, but I wouldn't want to anyway. Like, I was thinking about it. I was like, I wouldn't want, even though I have these opinions over here, right? It's really hard to even be so confident sometimes about these things. Even calling Carlee a liar, because it's like, what if I'm totally wrong and some like weird like other thing happened? Like, there's always that. It's like this little tiny thing in the back of my head that's always like, what if I'm wrong? But I'm rarely wrong. I can't predict the outcomes of these court cases, but I'm rarely wrong on like my gut on something. Um, but that it's still there. Like, I don't have that. Like, some of these people are just so confident on everything. But the Kevin thing is like, no, that's been known forever. Like I said, I've been following that forever. So way back, oh, I jumped over this last part. So yeah, the Twitter days. Okay, so then I don't know if it was like recommended by Twitter or oh, it was probably just me going, oh, Kevin Spacey. And so I started following him and I was just like, the guy's weird. Like, that's all I could say about it. I go, this weird, something weird, dude. That's all I could say about it. So this is before I could really, really hone down on these guys. And he was overly secretive to the point where, like, there's some people that like to be private, but I don't trust people that are too private because it's almost like, we know you're hiding something. You're hiding something because you don't want something out. And sometimes it's not always bad, but I'd say more times than not it is bad. Like, there's something about them that they know that if it was found out, like, something would be really bad about it. And just like Ricky Martin. That yeah, so there was something like that there. It wasn't just like, oh, I want my, love life private. It wasn't just like that. It was something bizarre. And so I just stopped following him because there's just like this eerie thing, and I can't even pinpoint like what it was that was making me feel like that. And then it started popping up these stories. So these stories started popping up, and there was no bandwagon then. There was no thing back then to go, oh, let's go accuse him of this. And like he was even going to get busted. Like, most of the people that were saying the stories are like, I don't want, I'm not looking to pursue anything, but oh my God, there's one guy, they were going on these stories, right? It was just like story after, and all of a sudden, more stories came in once somebody opened up and started talking about what he was doing. Um, all these other men came out, and there was females too. So there was some young girls too. So they're calling the girls liars here, I guess, too. And this has been going on for decades. It wasn't like just recently during Me Too, but they were painting it out like, oh, Me Too caused these people to want to jump on a bandwagon. I was like, dude, they were talking about him doing this stuff long before that. And long before they were even considering males as even rape victims, right? And I was just like, this is crazy. And so I was like, just watch what happens here, because watch his actions. It's all about him working. That's all he wants to do, is he wants that attention. Like, it's just, he's a socio. he doesn't care about like victims, like just generally. He doesn't care about child. You would think he would care about child abuse too, because he comes from that background. But no, no, no. It's all very self-serving. He's not trying to stop like any of that. He basically ran over the LGBTQ community and anybody else who, and some of them weren't a part of it. I guess there were some straight guys too, where he was trying to do some things there. But yeah, so basically, you just ran over that community where they can't get justice in this situation, and this is not a win. This is very bad. And it's a bad message to other boys too that do this stuff where, oh look, I can get away with it. You know what I mean? I can have 100 victims. It's totally cool. So that's the environment that I'm talking about too when they're being raised, because this is such a sociopath thing to have happen, that if a little boy witnesses, let's say like this type of thing, and then they learn that, oh, he went out and did all these things, and then they learn, oh, look, he just got away with it. They learn that they can get away with it. Mostly if they're already of that mindset, right? So they're picking that up, talking about other victims. So they're picking up from the lawyer, whoever said that garbage, that, oh yeah, they just made this stuff up to, get some, whatever bullshit. It's like, it doesn't make any sense from Kevin. Like, they're telling me that any guy that comes forward is a liar and that I should just disregard him, mostly when there's like 20, hundreds of them, you know what I mean? It's just because he's all that, Kevin's all that. He thinks he's all that. In his mind and his ego. Yeah. So, like I said, I was like, I was wanting to watch this to the very end to see if he lost, because I want to see what he would do. Like, I'm dying to see what he would do, because he catches himself in such a way that it's like he plays it off as this innocent person. And I was just curious, as like, if they said he's guilty, like what's he gonna say? Because it could go a couple ways. Like, I think I know what he would say. Again, he would be like, I totally don't agree with this and we're gonna fight it, whatever, and it's just unfortunate, people pick on me. Like, that's how I'm thinking he would have acted. But he could have totally done something else. And I was like, I want this to happen because, well, number one, to stop him from hurting himself and others, but two, to see what that type right there would do right here. He's very similar to Trump, but he's a lot smarter than Trump. So I don't know. I just wanted to see it. It was just one of those things that I was like, I'm gonna be sitting here waiting, and then this happens. So then it's just the typical, oh, they picked on me. See, oh, I'm the victim. Yes. And I'm like, here we go. The public in this is at fault. So it just fed the monster. And I'm just like, well, I don't need to hear that. He keeps going on like that. And it's just giving him, it's like a power boost. Now he feels invincible. So every time this happens, he's feeling more and more invincible, and he's going to keep doing it. Like, once you keep doing it, you're not going to get in trouble. You're like, I have 20 guys coming at me and I'm not ever getting busted. He can't stop. That's another thing about it. So it will continue to happen, I'm pretty sure, because he's been doing that for so many years that he's all enabled right here. The only thing I could think of is if he does, like, I don't know, like, I just can't imagine it. But if he just doesn't do it anymore, it would be because he's smart enough to know, like, he's like, okay, I'm not going to go through this again because, maybe eventually. But I don't know if his mind is going like that. He may get more crafty at what he does more than anything because of the type of socio that he is. And he's a higher IQ. So that's why... No, so he can go parade around all day. But I'm just letting you guys know, there's no way in hell I'm calling Kevin's victims liars. That is not the outcome that we're taking from that. We're taking from that the joke of the system that it is. And this is the prime example of the public enabling and promoting rape and predators like that. It's not the opposite that people are liars. It's the other way around. Is the fact that they have the problem and they see those things as okay. And the way that they've done these laws around it, You know, they're like, it wasn't penetrate. Well, the sex thing. Now, in London, I don't know what their legal thing is on the definition of that, but I'm for sure it's all not up to date because it isn't here either on some of those things. And they still have pro rape laws here, and they like to say they're not all rapists. I love that. I was like, oh, you have laws where it says you could go rape us, but you're saying that you're not a rapist. Okay, that's interesting. Brilliant, guys. But I had to do that because I was one of the big ones talking about him forever and dissecting his stuff. And it's just, yeah, it drained your energy. Mostly seeing this, it's like the outcome that you kind of figure would probably end up happening, but then you kind of hoped it wouldn't, and you just hope that just a miracle would happen in some which way, shape, or form. But no, so yeah, a million guys can come forward and say, yeah, these guys groped me and did all these things. And that's us women, right? So that's what we've been putting up with. So other men need to learn that. So you've been promoting that stuff on us. And those are the things when we go to court that they sit there and go, that's totally cool. It's fine. Yeah. So you're going to get the same thing back. So yes. And we came out first. So you know what I mean? Like that's the situation there.